Hello, welcome to In Conclusion, We Have No Idea. I'm Camille.
I'm Liz, and I have no idea.
Yeah, me neither, that's why we're here. Anyways,
Obviously.
so basically, um, we met in high school, which was a couple years ago, but we didn't really start to vibe until after we graduated. And I realized, oh dang, there's a lot to be spiteful about in this world. She'd already realized that, so then
Hmm.
we started to vibe on Twitter. So here we are.
Just be spiteful together, honestly.
That's what this podcast is for.
I I was so thrilled when you started being super spiteful on Twitter because it was my moment where I could really swoop in and be like, "So, I heard you want to be angry. Let me show you exactly how to do that."
You're like, I will be your guide in channeling your rage.
It will show you the way of the anger. Which, I mean, like I said, we met in high school, but you didn't really get to be spiteful until after high school. But I was already super, super spiteful in high school, especially considering the class that we met in.
Uh,
I was very spiteful already at that point. But that is exactly what is the true origin of your anger and hate.
yep, that's it. That was the point where I realized, wait a minute, people are actually not good all the time. You mean there are actually people like this?
Who would have thought? There's an evil, angry teacher who's coming after us for no reason? Who would have thunk?
Yeah.
Speaking of this angry teacher, would like to take a moment to really dive in to that whole situation because, dear God, she was awful. And I feel like since that's the origin of our anger, we should really take a moment to appreciate
Several moments.
a moment not a moment of silence, but just a moment of spite for an hour, you
Yes.
know?
An hour of spite. That's what this is. An hour of spite.
Take a drink of spite. Ha ha.
I'm caffeinated and ready to go.
No, okay. I was going for a Sprite joke there. Kind of missed, but it's all good.
I'm sorry.
It's all good. It's whatever, I guess. Anyways, so Marshall.
Where to begin? Where to begin?
Okay, I would like to point out that when we started that year, it was fine. We started that class and everything was good.
For
it wasn't
a week.
Yeah, everything was fine for a week, and then I don't even remember. Were we reading?
I think we were reading the Scarlet Letter.
Yeah, and we had some quiz or whatever on it, and one of the questions had two right answers, but I guess one was quote unquote more right than the other. But she didn't ask the question which answer is the most correct. It was which answer is correct. Technically, they're both correct, right?
So half the class answered one answer and the other half answered the other. So
they're both right though. It's not a matter of she asked which answer is correct. So on a technicality, they're both right. So we had that whole thing happen, and our class pointed out, hey, both of these answers are right based on how you phrased the question and based on the text that we were reading. Why, though? And she got really mad at us, super pissed.
And a normal teacher would have been like, oh, I can understand how that'd be confusing. I'll fix the question for the future, and thank you for pointing that out. That's very intuitive of all of you. Nope.
Not. Didn't we get into an argument about it? We had a full-on debate. No, this answer based on the text that you had us read. this
Oh, yeah.
answer is correct.
It was like
And
a
it's
20-minute thing.
Well, and it's not like we were even like one of like a delinquent class or whatever. Like, not saying that those are like bad classes. Like, you just like, you know how you have a lot of kids who tend to be like argumentative in those classes or like push against authority. This was like an honors English class. And so we were all just like little nerds who were like, no, I want my points.
Pretty much.
It's not a matter of us trying to like go against authority. It was more a matter of like, I'm desperate for points because I have to get an A in this class, because I have to do well in school, because I have to do well in college, because I have to get a good job. Like, it's like that kind of thing.
This question is the one thing between me and a dumpster. Please give it to me.
Exactly. So like, we were defending our future with this. I mean, like, but like, not that it was really that big of a deal, but at the same time, like, I mean, if I were a teacher and I had a question like that where like half of my students are getting it wrong because I phrased the question poorly or I wrote in 2 correct answers, like, I would want to know that.
Exactly.
So we pointed that out for her, and she got real pissed at us, like super mad. And we had this back and forth debate on why both answers were correct. And I think it was that moment that she decided she hated our class.
It was just downhill for the rest of the year.
Well, it was like first period honors English. So it's not like we were even like end of the day, no one cares or anything, or like right before lunch, no one cares or anything. It was like first class of the day.
It was way too early in the day for her to be that done.
Yeah, exactly. I don't understand why she was so pissed at us based on the fact that was the first, like, she was already that tired by the second we walked in the door. That woman should not have been a teacher. I'm sorry.
I don't think she wants to be a teacher. I'm going to be.
I don't even know if it's like she wants to be a teacher. I think she just wants to have like, it's like a power thing. Like, she just wants to feel better and like she's lording over people. That's the whole thing. Like, she can control. It's like a control thing, I think.
I think the most terrifying moment of that whole class, I think it was actually towards the end of the year. She got up one day and almost like with a smile and pride in her voice, she said, "Oh yeah, I know how people feel about me. It's a really special feeling." And I was Dan! Oh, Dan!
You wanna know why that happened? Because that's like a whole thing where it's like, it like builds up to that moment, because I'll tell you later. I got into it with her and my mom got involved, which my mom will not get involved unless she absolutely feels like it's necessary. And so it had gotten to the point in that year where my mom felt like it was a lot and that she needed to talk to Marshall. So that's a whole thing that I was going to tell you about. I don't know if I ever told you about that.
You've mentioned it. You definitely mentioned it. I know that your mom got involved with it at some point.
But it was like a whole thing. Like, I don't even, But back to the beginning, because like that kind of leads up to that point where she got up and said that she knows how everybody feels. Like, that was because my mom got involved and basically called her out.
Nice.
On her shit. And I mean, that whole situation with my mom going in got me involved as well. Because originally it was just supposed to be Marshall and my mom, but then it ended up getting me involved, which was a whole other than like the original thing. And I say thing a lot because I'm trying to avoid explicitly talking about exactly what happened until later because of how much it was. Anyways, so when we were reading that whole thing with the Scarlet Letter and she decided that she hated our class, like, it was from that moment on that, like, I think we just kind of became a lot more argumentative on purpose at that point, honestly.
I think this was like a rivalry was born, a rivalry.
Yeah, I think it was like we kind of realized she didn't like us. And so it's like, what's the point, right? Like, what is the point in trying to please someone who's already decided a week after having this class that she hated us? Like, she didn't even give us a real opportunity to show that we could be well behaved or anything like that. It was just like, you pointed this out to me, that's it. I hate you already.
Yep.
And it wasn't like she was coy about it either, because I had people in her honors class that was 4th period, and they would always say, like, I would get a text from my friend Amy about, like, I don't know, when did 4th period start? Like 1 o'clock in the afternoon?
Something like that. Yeah.
And she'd be like, what the hell did you guys do today? I'm like, nothing. We
read Great
That's Gatsby. What class is. I didn't read Great Gatsby, I'm not gonna lie. I still got an A on the paper, though. I didn't read Great Gatsby.
I got a C on the paper. I'm gonna jump into that right freaking now, because now I'm thinking about it. So, we read The Great Gatsby. And, I think I told you about this, right? How I got a C on my final paper for that, because
I didn't know that.
Okay, so Great Gatsby.
Is it because you argued a point that she didn't agree with?
Yes! That's exactly what happened! She was like, well, your opinion's different than mine, so therefore it sucks. So I basically, it was the beautiful part of high school where it's like, you cannot write an essay the night before, except for these essays. You have 45 minutes to write these essays.
Right.
And the topic, I don't even remember the topic, but I ended up writing about how, in The Great Gatsby, Daisy was just very materialistic, and it seemed like she only went for Gatsby after he met her standards, making her, quote-unquote, a gold digger. So I wrote about that. Like, Daisy is portrayed as, like, this perfect vision of innocence, but she's really not. She's just as corrupt as everyone else in this story. Wrote a whole essay on that. I was very proud of it. I was like, frick yeah, doing that English major analysis thing. I got it back, and it had like a C+ written on it, and she just wrote, you mischaracterized Daisy. And I'm like, but I didn't. I'm not wrong. Look me in the eye and tell me I'm wrong. I'm not
You're gonna look me and tell me that I'm wrong? Am I wrong, bro? She wore a crown and came down in a bubble. That's the vibe that I'm getting. Yeah.
That was exactly the vibe. And I was like, you're kidding. You are.
I don't even remember what I wrote about that essay. I remember I got an A on it, even though I hadn't read Great Gatsby at all. Like, I hadn't even picked up a single page out of that book. I read the Spark Notes the night before, went into that test, and got an A.
Gosh dang it. See, that was one of the few books. Okay. I read that book. I read that in The Scarlet Letter, and actually I think I read all. No, there was one book we didn't read, and ironically enough, it was the book that we were like allowed to choose which book we read, and I don't think I actually read the book.
Was it the summer reading that we had to do?
No, because the summer reading was I could talk about the summer reading too. The summer reading was Warriors Don't Cry. And she got up, and she was talking.
We could choose. What was it? I thought we could choose one of them.
Maybe we could. I don't remember.
No, because I remember we had 2 books we had to read. We had to read Warriors Don't Cry, and then one that we had to choose, and we had to make like some bullshit website about it that nobody ever ended up reading.
Because I read.
No, she wouldn't read. Like, I guarantee those teachers didn't go through every single website, because A, the website idea was dumb. B, I know they just did it as like, oh, you did the website, cool, here's credit. Anyways, but like, I don't ever remember having to choose although I remember having to choose a book. I don't remember what one I chose, because again, I didn't give a shit about that class at that point. Like, I was so done with Marshall that I was like, no ma'am, no, go away. Yeah. I don't like you.
But, and I remember the appeal to taking Marshall was like, she gives out less homework, but I paid for it in emotional damage.
Abuse?
Yeah.
I took that's literally exactly what I took, because I heard that she gave out less homework, but had I known.
It wasn't even worth it.
No, it really wasn't, based on like the emotional turmoil and the fact that I'm still mad about it.
It's been like 3 years.
It's been 4 years, dude.
Oh, dang. It's been 4 years, and we're still angry.
Yeah, because that was junior year of high school.
Yeah, and
We're juniors in college now.
Oh, dang. Smash Mouth was right. The days really do keep coming, and they don't stop coming.
And then they don't stop coming, and they don't stop coming, and they don't stop coming. Anyways, the Great Gatsby thing is like, that's something that I just like genuinely didn't care about at all. You know what I did care about though? The Crucible. I'm still mad about it. Okay, I am still furious about it. Were you in my group when we were reading The Crucible?
Yes,
because
I was.
I feel like I was personally attacked there.
Yeah, because I remember everyone was like, "You read for Abigail because you give off Abigail vibes," and I'm like, I don't think that's a compliment, but okay.
Nobody really assigned me anything. It was just more like, because I remember, okay, Crucible. The Crucible is about the Salem witch trials. That is a historical event. And the characters in the Crucible are based on people from Salem at the moment the witch trials were going on, right? So John Proctor is an actual human being who lived during the Salem witch trials. And it is very clear that he is one of the few men who gets murdered at the end of the Salem witch trials. It's like a whole thing. Everybody knows the Salem witch trials, right? Like, it doesn't take a genius to look up the Salem witch trials, find John Proctor's name on the list, and see that he's dead and he died. That is a historical fact, okay? I personally don't think that saying John Proctor dies at the end of the Crucible is a spoiler. I'm going to say that right now. It's not. You cannot spoil a historical event. So I don't remember, I think it was one of the other girls in our group was reading for John Proctor because this was a group of like all girls, so obviously we didn't have any guys to read for the guy parts. Not that that really matters, but you know, some people care about that, I guess. But I remember saying, because the girl was like, well, I mean, I think my character dies at the end of this. And I was like, oh, I mean, it's based on a historical event. So yeah, John Proctor is one of the guys who dies at the end of the Crucible. Because he died in the Salem witch trials. And that is a recorded historical event. And Miss Marshall heard that from across the room. I don't know how she zeroed in on that. But she came over and she started tearing into me. Like, how dare you spoil the end of this play? That is so rude, so disrespectful, so awful. I looked at her and I was like, I'm sorry. But in my heart, I was like, you can't spoil a historical event. Let me say that again. You cannot spoil a historical event. It's like spoiling the end of the Bible. Oh, Jesus dies? Who would have thought?
Exactly. It's like, guys, you're never gonna guess who won the American Revolution. I don't want to spoil it for you. Just
it's like the same thing as asking a question, when was the War of 1812? Like, it just so rubbed me the wrong way. I was like, you cannot it's like, oh my god, we're reading what is it, Julius Caesar? Shakespeare's play, Julius Caesar. I wonder what happens to Caesar at the end of the play.
Gosh, I hope he gets stabbed. He's got it coming.
Yeah, like I don't know what happens to Caesar. That Brutus guy seems like he's a little shifty, but like, who knows? I don't know. What happened? Like, it just so pissed me off that she was like on a tirade against me. And I was like, this is a fact. Like, it doesn't take a genius to look up the Salem witch trials and see John Proctor's name as one of the murdered ones.
I don't think anyone cared. I don't think
no one
was like all bent up over the end of the Crucible. I think we were like, we come to class, we read book, we write paper, we get grade, we go home.
Well, and it wasn't even like nobody in that group cared, because it was you in the group, the other girl who already kind of figured out and knew that John Proctor died. Yeah. Like, if it's that obvious based on context clues, duh. Like, and it's a whole other thing, because it's not like it was like at the very beginning of the play where I said that. Like, we were pretty much almost to the end.
He was like,
context clues say John Proctor's gonna die in the Crucible, because he does. in the real life event, also known as the Salem witch trials.
And
so
yeah,
nobody cared except for Marshall, and she just like ripped into me, and I'm still a little spicy over that, because it's just like she has that need to control, and so having that moment, I think, really, really pissed her off. Because how dare you spoil the end of the Crucible that is based on a historical event.
I think it would have been funnier if we'd been reading Romeo and Juliet, and someone had said, like, and you had said, oh, like when Romeo and Juliet die at the end, and she'd gotten mad at you for that. Because first of all, it's pretty common knowledge. Like, the plot of Romeo and Juliet is, like, common knowledge. Like, I don't know why, it just is. And two, at the very beginning of the play, there's, like, a whole, like, setup where it's like, this is a story about two lovers who died. And you're just, so you know right from the get-go, these two are screwed. So.
Well, it's like, even in the Salem witch trials, it's you know that people are gonna die.
Yeah.
It's like being shocked that people die in Hamlet, or that people die in Othello, or that people die in any sort of show where it is very common for people to die.
It's like we'll take another Arthur Miller play, for example, like Death of a Salesman. Gee, I wonder what's gonna happen to the salesman.
Obviously.
And I don't think Arthur Miller was exactly being subtle either. So
it just, yeah, that whole thing just really, really pissed me off. And I think that was a moment where, because I had kind of been back and forth on whether or not, like, I really didn't like her, because, like, she was mean to our class, but, like, up until that point, it wasn't really, like, she didn't direct her hatred towards me. There were, like, people in that class she specifically, like, went after up until that moment.
Yeah. I think
and then she started going after me, and I think I just took that and I was like, okay, you want to go?
Personal.
I was like, it's personal now. Like, you want to go? Because I have no problem with telling you politely, ma'am, to fuck off.
Mood. She went after me a lot, and I don't know why. I was like,
I think it was the insecurity and the weakness. You weren't very aggressive in high school.
No, I wasn't. It's because I was like a perfectionist who was like, everyone needs to like me all the time. And that's why I, like, never, like, in the theater department, I always, like, put on a big smile when I was cast as tree number 7 again. I was like, I'm just happy to be here. And in reality, I'm sitting there thinking I literally memorized the entire role before auditions, and I put my heart and soul into it, and then you pick...
I think theater's a whole other thing, though.
Yeah.
Like, that's a whole thing right
there.
We
could get into that another day. Anyway.
But I think Marshall really sensed, like, she senses weakness.
I was the weak little gazelle learning how to walk, and she knew.
Because by the end of the year, for me at least, she stopped going after me, like, in, like, a personal attack sense, because I think she knew that I wasn't gonna, like, fuck around, and I wasn't gonna take shit from her, and I almost think she kind of respected that a little bit.
Then there was me, and she was like, yes, that scrawny chick in the back of the class, she doesn't deserve respect. Boom.
I don't even know if it's, like, not deserving respect, but she would go after, like, the weakest link in the area. Not saying that you were, like, the weakest link, like, intellectually, but just, like...
I was just, like...
You weren't gonna stand up and call her out, like other people in the class would.
Yeah. I embodied the John Mulaney quote, hey, you could pour soup in my lap and I'd probably apologize to you.
Yeah. I mean, that was you in high school for sure. Okay. Especially at junior year. Senior year was a little better, but junior year, that was definitely, you weren't, like, super... Like, you definitely weren't like me. I was very aggressive in high school. I mean, in terms of telling people off if I felt like it. I had no problem with telling people exactly how I felt about them.
Yeah, that was...
But Marshall would sense that, and so I think she went after you a lot that year, at least, because I mean, even later in the year when we had that mock trial, she put the 3 people who argued with her most as the judges for our mock trial, right?
Right.
Because she put me and I think Brayden and Aaron, because we had no problem calling her out and saying, hey, that's not right, don't do that, like, that's dumb, that's because she didn't like us. What was the point in trying to make her like us when she's already made that choice before we even got the opportunity to show her why she should like us?
I remember I was just sitting at the back of the class one day, and I'm a fidgety person. Everyone knows.
Mm-hmm.
I fidget, and sometimes fidgeting involves like mouthing words. And I happened to have the Schuyler sisters from Hamilton stuck in my head. So naturally, I kind of was just mouthing the words, but I was paying attention. I was listening. I was intently listening. She looks right at me. She says, "Do you have something you'd like to share with the class, Camille?" And me, being oblivious, was just like, "Oh, no." And she's like, "Well, it looked like you were saying something." I'm like, "No." And she's like, "Oh, okay. Guess you're just in your own little world back there, huh?" And then she just kept going, and I'm like, "I'm listening, I promise I'm listening, don't yell at me."
Yeah, I think I remember, so, like, her observational skills, I think she would look for people doing and saying things so she could attack them. Because I remember one time, it was right after we had finished ACTs and we had gotten our scores back. And not even, like, humble bragging out, I did pretty well on the ACT, all things considered. And I only ended up taking it once because I was cool with my score the first time, like.
Yeah.
But I did really well on the writing and reading, or whatever. Not the reading, it's the reading and English portion or whatever. Like, I remember because there was 2 English type portions. Like, there was the reading and we didn't have to write an essay, but it was like the sentence and English structure and all that stuff.
Yeah.
I don't even remember what it was called. But I got my scores back, and I got a 34 on both of those portions.
Which is awesome.
Right. But it wasn't because she did anything. She did all these ACT prep tests, and I never did well on any of them because she didn't teach us stuff. But I had an uncle who was a test writer for the ACT for a few years. And so I went in and he tutored me on what the ACT is looking for when they ask those questions, how to answer those questions properly, and like all of these things. And I went in probably once a week for a few weeks before the ACT so I could kind of learn like what they're looking for, because I was very worried for the English portion. Like, the math and science was never something that I was super concerned about based on, I mean, I'm a math major now. It's not like it was something that I was going to be super worried about, because I thought I was going to do fine, and I did great on it. But the English portion I was really worried about, because Marshall wasn't teaching me anything. And so I was telling someone, I don't remember who in this class I was telling, that I had gotten a 34 on the English portion. And I saw Miss Marshall in the back of the classroom, like, smirk and, like, kind of, like, take pride in herself or something. And so I looked at her. I didn't look at her, but I mentioned very loudly, and I was like, yeah, it's because my uncle, who was a test writer for the ACT for a few years, helped me learn how to answer these questions. And she looked very, very angry after that. It's like, you take away that, like, that pride and joy of her, like, oh, look, I proved something against you, haha, look at me. And it's like, she doesn't have anything left.
Exactly.
That was a moment for me where I really realized that she was not in it to teach students. She was in it to lord over them and act like some sort of god or whatever. And it really just pissed me off a lot.
Yeah. She just, and I don't, yeah. And here's the thing, that has continued. I'm sure there are other things, like, that wasn't just an us thing. That wasn't just because
Uh-uh.
called her out. Like my little sister took her class this past year. No, not this past year. Last year. And
I mean, in the last couple of years.
yeah,
Since we graduated.
Since we've graduated. And one day she was, it was before the bell had even rung for class to start, and she had her earbuds on her desk. And Miss Marshall came by and just picked them up and was like, no music in class. And she was like, you can get these back from the office at the end of the day. And my sister wasn't even using them. She was like getting ready to put them away, and she got them taken away. And my sister is, at times she's kind of like me, and she doesn't like, she feels
authority figures, she doesn't have a backbone.
Yeah. So instead of going to get her earbuds back, she went and purchased new earbuds. Which, I don't know, I would have just gone and gotten the earbuds back, but, you know.
But it's like almost like a shameful thing, and like you didn't even do anything wrong at that point.
Yeah, and like, had she had her earbuds in, or had she like
been listening to music actively,
or like, and this was before the bell had even rung. This wasn't even like class was in session yet. This was like, she still had a minute, but yeah, so, and I was talking to some coworkers today, and one of them, because we were talking about her, because I work with lots of high schoolers, right? And so he says, oh yeah, we all hate that woman. She's a monster. In fact, one time, someone took a Kind bar, like those granola bars, and put it on her door with a note that said, you're not very kind.
Oh my god, was that after we graduated?
That was this year. That was this year. So the legacy is on.
I am so proud of whoever did that. I am so proud. Someone needed to tell her.
But here's the best part. And she looked at it, she laughed, and she said, this is really funny. And she kept it on the door all year long.
She is
insane.
I don't even know how to describe her in a way that would be like, I don't know, like I don't want to give
ultimate
her
Karen.
credit.
The ultimate Karen.
She just has such Karen energy. That's exactly what I was thinking. Without being able to say it, she just carries Karen energy with her all the time. And it's awful. Like, okay. And I think we can kind of get to the point now where my mom walked in. It was like our end of year essay, right?
Right.
I had I'd gotten really sick the day that we were getting the information, like the intro and stuff about the essay, because I was sick. I don't remember exactly what I was doing. I was probably bitching about something, like dying or whatever. But I went in to go pick up the information because I was like, I need to know what's going on, like the instructions and everything. And she handed me the packet. And so I looked at the packet and I had a couple of questions. And so I went up to her and I asked her, and she was like, well, you just need to figure it out. And I was like, you're supposed to be a teacher. Fucking teach. Like, that's your job. If I have a question, you're supposed to answer it. And I'm sure it was because it was a question she didn't actually know the answer to. So instead of saying, I don't know, let me figure that out real quick, it was, well, you need to figure it out yourself. And I was so furious with that answer. I went home and I was talking to my mom about it. And I think my mom had been hearing me complain about this woman all semester and all year and all of that. And so I think that was the moment where, when she told me basically, without saying it, to go fuck myself, I think my mom heard that and was like, okay, no, we're done. And so she was like, I'm gonna go talk to Miss Marshall. And you know, me being like the little student that I am, like, no, Mom, please don't do that. Like, please don't. Like, you're gonna make everything worse. Like, it is gonna be awful. Like, please do not talk to Miss Marshall. I don't want to make it worse. But my mom had she had reached a point where she had heard me complain all year long about how Miss Marshall had been treating us as a class without even giving us a chance to prove that we could do better. Like, it wasn't even, like, she had decided within a week of the first class of the entire year that she didn't like us. So she didn't even give us a real opportunity to prove that we could be good kids or to prove that we could be well behaved or to prove anything. And so I think my mom heard that and was like, okay, no, we're done. Like, it's one thing to be antagonistic towards your students, but still begrudgingly help them. It's another to be actively antagonistic and refuse to help them when they need it, especially when it comes to a major essay at the end of the year that's worth 30% of your grade. Like, telling me to just figure it out myself when this is such a huge portion of the grade, and if I don't get this question answered, it could mess up a whole lot of things. Like, it just didn't. I think my mom heard that and was so done with it. So she went in and she talked to Miss Marshall, and I had gone down to the library at that point because it was before class in the morning. And so I always just kind of did my own thing in the library, and I get this text from my mom. She's like, come up to Miss Marshall's class right now. And I was like, you know that, like, sense of doom and dread that you get when you're like, fuck, did Miss Marshall somehow convince my mom that I was the enemy here? And so I went up, and the first thing that I walk in, Miss Marshall looks me dead in the eyes, and she's like, you need to explain to your mom what exactly is going on here. And so I did. I was like, Marshall, you told me to figure it out myself, and you wouldn't answer any of my questions when I asked you. I was like, you need to be more open to answering questions from your students, because this is a major portion of the essay, or like of your grade and everything. Like, this essay is important to my grade, and I need to know what's going on. And so you telling me to just figure it out myself, yeah, I was a little frustrated about that. And she looks at me and she's like, you're a liar. That is not what I said. That is not the truth. You did not. I would never say that. And my mom looked at her and she was like, no, I entirely believe my daughter based on the fact that I've been hearing this kind of stuff all year. It wasn't like it was just out of nowhere. It wasn't like it was just, you know, she was frustrated with you one day and just said that. Like, it's consistent with things that I have been hearing all year long from my daughter. And so having Marshall call me a liar in front of my mom was one of the most, like, frustrating things in my life. Because here's the thing. I love my mom, but I kind of fear her a little bit. Like, it's like a healthy respect. Like, I wouldn't...
Yeah. That's how parents...
I wouldn't just lie to my mom about that kind of thing to rile her up to a point where she's going to go talk to a teacher.
Right.
So Marshall called me a liar in front of my mom, said that I would never say anything like that, herself at least. She would never say anything like that. She is cordial to these students. She is nothing but a neutral party. She called herself a neutral party. And my mom was like, you have been anything but a neutral party. And so she was like, these students know exactly how you feel about them. They know that you don't like them, and they're not going to behave because they know that you never gave them the opportunity. And I was like, yes, Mom, you said exactly what I have wanted to say to Marshall all year long. Because we knew exactly how she felt about us. But, like, no one was going to say that to her because we also, like, you know, nerdy kids who wanted good grades. We wanted to get an A in this class. So we weren't, like, we were little shitheads sometimes, but we weren't actively, constantly awful and antagonistic. But she always took every single debate as a personal attack against her. And so she would go and complain to her fourth period class about us. And I had friends in 4th period, and they told us exactly how Marshall felt about us. It wasn't like it was a secret.
Right.
Because she would always complain about us all the time and say how awful we were and how horrible we were. Well, so we knew. So that was the day that Marshall got up and said that she knew how we felt about her and how she knew that everyone knew how we felt about her or whatever. And that's how she got up that day and said that she was a neutral party. And I know, thinking in my head, I was like, you are anything but a neutral party. Literally shut up right now.
Yeah.
So I don't remember if I had ever told you what exactly had happened in that meeting, but
That story sounds pretty familiar, so.
It was one of the most, like, frustrating days, because I was like, first of all, don't call me a liar in front of my mom. Because I'm a good student. I'm sorry, I don't know if you knew that, but I'm a good student. It's, like, shocking, I know, based on the fact that you won't even give me the, like, time of day to prove that, but, like, I can be good.
Yeah.
So anyways, I don't like Miss Marshall.
Yeah, me either. She, like, literally, I'm an English major now, right? She almost destroyed that. She almost, like, completely destroyed my love of, like, literature and reading and writing. She almost completely destroyed it, because it felt like, because for years the appeal to being able to read and write was it was my way of expressing myself. And it felt like I wasn't allowed to express myself unless I felt the same way she did, which is very interesting to see that contrast in, like, the college classroom. Because in the college classroom, we're, like, encouraged to have different ideas. Like, if we, like, raise our hand and after the professor says something, we're like, I actually interpreted it like this. They're like, that's super fascinating. I never would have thought of it that way. Thank you for bringing that to the table. And it's just a very different environment. And it's just like, this is what, like, English is supposed to be. It's not like, English isn't based in fact. It's not like history where it's like, this is what happened. This is how it is. It can't be disputed. English is like one of...
Yeah, I mean, it's not like math where it's like there's an answer and that's it.
Yeah, English is like one of those up to interpretation things. So to have that ability to, like, interpret things your own way taken away, it literally almost... Because that takes all the fun out of, like, English. So that literally almost ruined English for me, and had it not been for other English teachers I had, like, instilling that love of reading and writing in me, I probably wouldn't have been an English major. And I don't like science or math, so I genuinely don't know what else I would have done with my life.
I think my main problem with Marshall was she decided to rule her classroom by force rather than rule her classroom by facilitating an equal discussion. Yeah. She didn't see us as adults. I mean, teenagers, they're not adults, but we know when we're being manipulated. We know when we're being treated less than. We know when, like, that is a conscious being who has had enough time in their life to formulate their own thought processes.
Yeah, teenagers aren't little children who you can just, like, tell them
control.
Anything.
It's not like a first grader where you can say that I'll take away recess if you don't behave, and they'll behave. They're teenagers who sit there and they're like, this isn't right. You're not treating me equally. I know what you're doing, and I don't like it. Exactly. Like, they know when they're being treated unfairly, and they'll call it out. But she ruled her classroom by force, which made that situation so much worse. If she had just facilitated an equal discussion and not had tried to force us into behaving.
Yeah.
Because she could have taken that energy in that class and used it to facilitate really, really great discussions about the things we were reading and doing. But she didn't.
Yeah, and I used to be an education major, and in my education classes we talk about things like this. And there is a very common problem where there are lots of teachers who don't actually actually want to be teachers, and it's obvious. Because teachers
It's just
really,
like a power thing.
yeah, teachers who really want to be teachers are passionate about doing just that. They're passionate about teaching. They are they want to like help each of their students individually if they have to understand concepts and to develop ideas and to like basically help nourish and build up a person. And she just didn't seem to have any interest in doing that. She seems to have more of an interest in, like you've already said, just like having control over something.
She wanted us to take her ideas that she had about the books we read, and that was the only correct interpretation. It wasn't a thing where it's like, you can make your own choice about how this is read. Because, okay, when we were writing our paper about, like, the social problems, which is a whole problem. I had a whole issue with that because one of the problems was, you know, it was LGBT rights. And I was like, that is not something I feel is appropriate to allow these students to quote unquote debate. Because we live in Utah, which is a very conservative state. I don't want to have to read a paper about how I don't deserve rights. And I don't think that that's something that is appropriate for high schoolers to debate in an English class. My paper was about domestic abuse. It was an argumentative essay. What the hell do you talk about for an argumentative essay about domestic abuse?
And here's the problem with those papers. These were like super controversial issues that really shouldn't have been like for or against. It should be like,
research both topics, present arguments for both topics in an equal manner.
Yeah.
Don't choose a side.
But it's like, you can't debate human rights. Like, they're called human rights, not human, if you're this way, you
lifestyles.
Yeah, and I actually remember when we were reading Warriors Don't Cry, she actually got up, and this was at the beginning of the year, and this is like the moment when I was like, so you're one of those teachers. She was like, there was a black student, who said she didn't want to read this book because it made her uncomfortable. I'm not going to say who. And we live in, like, suburban Utah, where
there's only, like, 7.
So it's like, okay.
7 options.
Down. And she was like, but I'm making her read the book because I don't believe in, like, giving someone, like, an edge just because of who they are. And I'm like, and I remember sitting there thinking, I'm like, she probably doesn't want to read this book because she's experienced it. She doesn't need to read this book. So
especially because we live in suburban Utah, which is very, very racist here. Yeah. But it's not overt, and it's not, like, obvious. It's very subtle racism. And so a lot of the stuff that they experience in the book ends up being a lot of subtle racism. Which... Yeah, that she was not a teacher. I would not have put her on my favorite teachers list, period. And honestly, you want to know the only reason she hasn't been fired yet? Because there have been complaints about her.
Obviously.
It's because she's really good friends with the principal. Yeah. So she's not going to get fired so long as someone doesn't take it up to, like, the superintendent or anything. And it's just frustrating. Because I remember, and, like, when I was considering being an English teacher, I remember actually saying in one of my lesson plans, when I was, like, picking books to read, because here's the thing, you do need to have, like, students read hard books, like, books that are going to tackle some issues, but if a student doesn't feel comfortable reading the book for, like, a legitimate reason, like, because they've experienced it or it hits a little too close to home, I think that's a moment where it's like, you don't need this book. You already know this. So you from this. And this is kind of relates to that kind of topic. When we were in theater, we had to read some plays, and a lot of the plays, you know, it's theater, so they're going to be kind of hard-hitting topics, especially if they're dramatic plays.
Right.
And one of the plays on the list was the Laramie Project. I don't know if you know what the Laramie Project is.
Yeah, I've read it.
So we were given the option to choose any play from that list. And I ended up choosing the Laramie Project. And our theater teacher sat down with me and she said, okay, do you know what it's about? And I said, yes, I do. And she was like, are you going to be okay reading this? And I said, yes, I am. She's like, if you ever want to back out and you don't want to read this, please come let me know and we can switch your play. And I said, that is a good option. I appreciate it, but I think it's important for me to read it personally. But she was like, I just don't want you to feel like you have to read this because of some meta reason or whatever. And I said, no, I think for me, it's important for me to read it and understand and to know everything that went on there.
Right.
But it's the fact of the matter is she told me kind of exactly what to expect, and she still said, are you okay with reading this? You can back out at any point. You don't have to do this. It was being given the option to step away and say, no, this is too close for me. This is too much. I don't want to do this. And she gave me that moment up until the day before our projects were due, where I could back away, choose a different play, and then try again.
And that's exactly how it should be done. Like,
it was being presented the option. I chose to do it anyways. I wasn't forced to do something that I didn't want.
Yeah, so, and I feel like those books and those plays aren't written for the people that they're about, because they know. It is written so that those of us who don't fall under that umbrella can understand and have some empathy and be like, oh, this is what you go through, and this is really horrible, and we need to understand that.
Yeah. Forcing a student to read something that hits too close to home, reminds them or triggers them in any way is something that I'm completely opposed to. But Marshall didn't care about that. She only cared about power and lording over students, and I didn't like her very much. She knew that I didn't like her, and I knew that she didn't like me, and honestly, to be quite frank, I think at the end of the year, she kind of grew to respect that about me, because I wasn't afraid to tell her off, or tell her no, or tell her that's dumb.
Yeah.
Also, I think she kind of reached a point where she was like, I'm not gonna get anywhere with her, I can't control this one. So I just did my own thing, and I think by the end of the year, she respected that. But I know a lot of students she didn't respect and took it out on them, and it was awful. And that woman should not have been a teacher.
She still shouldn't be a teacher. And
it has been exactly 0 days since we have complained about Miss Marshall.
It happens like once a week. We'll just be chilling, and all of a sudden one of us is like, remember when she did this? And just...
Well, it's like we'll be sitting there, and then it's like 1:30 in the morning, and I feel like you'll get a text that's like, and another thing.
And I'm just there like, frick yeah, you say that other thing. It needs to be said.
I feel like I just sit there, and like the more I think about it, the more things I remember that's like, wow, she was really awful.
Yeah. And
I think it's so important to know that bad teachers are out there, because bad teachers can ruin subjects for people. Like you said, like, she almost ruined your English major for you. And like, one bad teacher can ruin an entire subject for you. And I think that's awful. And so it's just so hard for me to, like, think about her and her tirades and the way she tried to control everything and everyone all the time. It just really frustrated me a lot.
Yeah, she was... I've got another little sister who is about a year from starting high school. She's got one more year of junior high left. And she's like, I think I can handle Miss Marshall.
No.
Both me and my sister, who have both had her and hated her, are like, no. And she's like, oh, but I'm different. I'm like, no, you're not. You think you are? You're not. She's not gonna like you. She's got 2 Osborns under her belt who are like...
already...
like,
set in the bar.
Way. So, like, you're gonna show up, it's gonna be like Ron Weasley showing up at Hogwarts. It's gonna be like, oh, another Weasley. It's like, and that's the struggle bus
It's even
being
better
the
because your family's all redheads, aren't they?
um no, she's not. It's just me
Oh.
and my one sister. The other two aren't redheads. But it's like, and that kind of sucks being the younger sibling. It's like you almost
Oh, it does.
don't have a chance to be like,
Trust me, I know.
yeah,
As a youngest sibling, I am the youngest, so both of my siblings went before me, and so that's always lovely to have to follow up. But I it's fine.
it's fine.
But your little sister's gonna fucking die, dude. Just tell her the more homework is better than the emotional abuse
Yes.
from a teacher.
Yes.
Can verify.
Luckily, we've got a mom who's like, you've got two sisters who struggled in this class, so you probably shouldn't take it.
Well, and the thing is Miss Thompson took her for mythology. She gives out a lot of homework, but it's not like it's hard, but it's something that is almost kind of enjoyable.
Yeah. That's what I heard.
Like she gives out stuff that's like encourages students to appreciate the subject rather than hate themselves, their lives, their teacher, and everybody else. Did we have to? I remember we had to read The Grapes of Wrath too. In that class. I also did not read that book as well.
I don't even remember being assigned that book, so I definitely didn't read it.
Definitely did not read that book. But anyways, in conclusion,
I have
no idea. I have no idea.
We just know she was awful and terrible, and that we dedicated an hour of our lives to complaining about her.
The fact of the matter is I still have more to complain about, though.
Do you have
that's not even all of it?
Do you want to do like a lightning round? We've got a few minutes before we hit the hour mark. Just lightning round it.
Let's see. Assigning me to be a judge in the court case because she knew that I was argumentative with her and that I would have opinions. Arguing with me about whether or not the government should fund centers for domestic violence. That was really lovely. We had a debate about that. She was like, I really think you should write your essay about whether or not the government should fund these centers. I'm like, I can't find any papers about that. The only thing that I can find is how the money should be spent. We had that one day where she split us off into guys and girls and had us compete against each other in like a quiz game or whatever, and then got really mad when I knew all the answers for the guys because I had an older brother and I mostly spent I watched sports when I was younger. I watched all of that shit because I didn't get the option to watch what I wanted. Not that that matters though, because gender segregation is dumb as fuck. It's not. That was also something that I didn't like. Reading Taming of the Shrew and then having her make a snide comment about how I should play Catherine because I'm a lot like Catherine. And I was like,
the best thing about that is you were like, okay, fine, I will. And then you read for that part every single day. And you just so much spite.
And I was like, are you really, we can have this discussion right now. Because not like you're any better, sweetheart. Okay? Thank you. Oh, it's dumb. She didn't like any of the poetry that I wrote for our poetry unit. She didn't ever give us any rules about how we should write it, though, because why would she? She didn't like giving me directions about what I should do because she wanted me to fail. All of our ACT prep quizzes, that sucked as well. Because I think she changed some questions sometimes to fit her own ideas of what these questions should be. That really pissed me off. I was like, this isn't reflective of how the ACT is. It's like, it's not reflective of the ACT. And she always made it a point every single time to ask everybody who got a 10 out of 10 on the quiz, who got a 9 out of 10 on the quiz. Forcing students to out themselves as getting a poor score on the quiz. And these are kids who their grades are a very large part of who they are.
Right.
They are their grades. Their grades reflect who they are. If they get bad grades, they are bad kids. And so you are forcing these kids to call themselves out, and you are forcing these kids to say, I am a bad kid because I did not do well on this quiz. That pissed me off all the time.
Right.
Like, you're making these kids feel like shit for doing poorly on a quiz that you fabricated and you changed stuff about, and it's not even reflective about the ACT. And that was the same time the Dakota Access Pipeline was being put in. So I remember talking to someone in the morning about it, and she butts into the discussion, and I don't even remember what she said, but I remember sitting there and I was like, was I looking at you when I was talking to you? No. Do you think I like you? No. Do you think I want to debate with someone who I don't have respect for? No. And it's like, I was disagreeing with kids in this debate circle we had going on, but I respected those kids. And even if we disagreed, I respected what they would think about it.
That's the rough part of growing up in
a mutual understanding and respect for each other. And I think that was so important. It really pisses me off because she could have taken a really good advantage of the energy of that class and directed it towards healthy and constructive debates about things. But instead she used that energy, turned it into something where we would just be obnoxious because we knew she didn't like us and we knew that she wasn't going to change. So, like, why would we want to participate in a healthy class discussion if we know that she's going to fight with us about it, you know?
Right.
So, again, in conclusion,
we have no idea.
I have no idea why she was the way she was, but...
And the world may never know, but we just have to suffer.
Yeah, I feel bad for her children, spouses, anybody involved in her life.
Children.
She did. No, she did.
Oh, those poor children.
Yeah, she had photos of her children on stuff, and I always felt so bad. I was like, oh.
You're never going to be allowed to have your own opinion.
She is definitely a Karen. She is such a Karen.
Definitely.
Such a Karen.
She's the mom in Say Yes to the Dress who's like, you have to wear this dress because I told you so. No, I don't care that you hate it.
Exactly. Because she had that modicum of power, she used it absolutely. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. I really think that was a running theme in that class that year.
Which, we could learn so much from that. That class should have been a democracy. It was a dictatorship. And that's like just, that class is a metaphor for what happens when there's a dictatorship. And it's not good.
I mean, it's true, because we low-key kind of rioted in that class every single day. I mean, not even to, like, generalize. There were good kids in that class who would sit there and take it from her and not hand it back. But there were definitely kids at myself in that class who didn't take shit from her and didn't care.
And the kids who did take it kind of appreciated it. We were like, yeah, saying what we wish we had the guts to say.
Which is so dumb, because that was a class of, like, 40 students? If she expected to be able to lord extreme power over 40 students without somebody saying anything to her, like, I'm sorry. That's just unrealistic.
Yep. In conclusion?
That's like our third conclusion?
Yes. We have no idea, but she was the worst. She was the worst.
The worst. The end. Not really the end, but, like, temporary the end. I'm sure it'll come back up eventually, because it's a root of a lot of problems. that we have, but
Yep, yep. But you know what? It was like our mutual hatred of this one teacher that brought us together. So like,
that's why I think it's really important that we go over it first and foremost.
Yep.
Because it really explains a lot about how we interact.
Two spite-filled ships passing each other on a spite-filled ocean.
Waving. But
Yeah. All right, so I think we are just about on time. I have no idea how to end podcasts.
I was gonna just, be like, you know what? It do be like that sometimes, though.
It do be like that sometimes. Join us next time when we discuss other ways that it do be like that.
You know.